Ticket for an airplane.
Rock and roll.
Okay.
We've already talked.
When we say the word letter,
there are no new folks today. Stephen has joined us on Zoom for the first time, having been at the live meeting 2 weeks ago. And I know that there are a couple of announcements, and one of them relates to a revised welcome letter that Helen has worked hard on, and the others of us have contributed a little bit. But Bill, do you want to talk about that for a bit?
yeah, I can do that. Because what we try to do is to, we have a group here, and I think what Stephen said kind of dovetailed right into this, where we are a different type of group. We're a respectful group. We all get along. We're willing to give contributions as far as critiques. We're willing to participate in the challenges and things like that. So what we did is to put together a letter that if we have any potentially new members that would like to see who we are, it kind of gives them a little overview of the kind of group this is. We're not a Chapel Hill Camera Club. And we have them be able to see the links to our YouTube video. So what we like to do is have them understand what they're coming into, if they want to join the group. And all it simply does is states that, we're this kind of group, and we're trying to make sure that people who do join a group are interested in either mirrorless or DSLRs, even though we do talk about cell phones once in a while. But we just want to keep the, I don't know, is this the right word? Homogeneous feeling of this group together. So once they get the ability to go see the YouTube video, they can come to a meeting. And then what Frank is going to do is send them a email for some additional information, what kind of camera you have, this and that. And as long as they respond, if they show that they're still interested, we put them on the list and they're in. They get all the emails, my silly videos and stuff like that. And we just kind of move on from there. So that's all it is. And I think, Helen, you're going to just send a copy so everybody can see it.
Yeah, I was going to wait and see if after this conversation, what people felt about this approach is to admitting new members, and I will send it on out if we're all on the same page. But I think we're just trying, as Bill said, to have people who join be committed to not to cell phones and not to trying to tell us that we should be using cell phones. And we want people that are a fit. It's like when I used to hire people, that was one of the criteria, was the person a good fit. And Bill, you had, I think, 4 or 5 points that we really didn't put in the letter. What were those things?
I don't even know what they were. I probably deleted them, but I think we've covered them.
Yeah.
It's just to try to make sure we bring people into the group that, like you say, fit, that'll participate, that'll have fun with us, be willing to get out once in a while with our little group outings, things like that. Just it's not a big deal. It's just to give them the opportunity to know what we're about.
I've recently used the language that this is a group that is becoming and is not already being, as opposed to being a static, unchanging, that we're all about becoming, which is learning. And that goes down to each and every one of us. We're not show-offs. And there is something that everybody in this group can teach somebody else in this group, and that's what we're all about. So, but thanks for the hard work on the letter. And again, and
Yeah,
you're going to get the letter even if you're an oldie.
yeah, I'll send out the letter at least to this group.
Maybe you watch the video and leave. No.
No.
Also, Mike, I think, is going to work on our Facebook and our Flickr
Yeah, they're with the
pages and try to get things straightened out there about what it says about people that might be interested in joining the group.
it's not as fleshed out as the letter is, and I'm going to try to incorporate a little bit more of the flavor of it. So
yeah, because the way it is right now, somebody in Alaska could join, and
No.
we don't need that. So we want to go through and just make sure that expresses what we have just talked about today, and eliminate some of the photos that are from people that we never heard of, none of us. So,
Lynn?
So I have a question. Are we having inquiries from people about joining our group?
Yeah.
yeah,
Steven?
There's
Oh,
Steven.
okay.
There are a couple of other people that we've contacted. One of them turned out to not be and this was not a judgment that anyone here made, but they kind of self-selected out for health reasons. But yeah, there are people. So
yeah.
Okay, thank you.
And I think that we can add a few and not become too big.
agreed.
Yeah. I think what we've really focused on is having a quality instead of a quantity.
Mhm.
Yeah.
We've got one more person that I think will be with us, but he was going to Florida, Stephen, and shoot birds, and then I think a trip to maybe Yellowstone. It was out west anyway, so he probably will be joining us.
Is that the
Later.
person? Is that the person I gave you the email address for?
Yes.
Okay. If
Yeah.
you look at his Flickr website, oh my gosh. Okay.
Lynn,
I just had one comment before we move on. I didn't know we had a YouTube video.
oh,
Yeah. Just search on Chatham InFocus.
Okay, thanks.
yeah, and
Not YouTube.
the link is in the minutes that Helen sent out. So
Okay,
That's just for the meetings. That's what that is, just a recording of the meetings.
Yeah.
You're being recorded right now, Chuck, whether or not you realize it.
oh, I know that, yeah.
Yeah.
I had to click on this thing saying I got it.
okay, Lynn, your turn.
All right. So I had an idea y'all may like or not, but I was thinking it might be fun if we had a social gathering.
Mhm.
I would offer my house. Spouses would be included. We'll just have a potluck dinner or whatever y'all want to do. I think it'd be fun.
Me too.
I don't know
Yep.
if y'all agree or disagree.
Agree.
Agree.
Yeah, agreed.
So would you want to do a potluck dinner or more just casual wine and cheese something? Stephen?
Yeah, I guess I was thinking, there's another group that I've been involved with for a fair number of years now that does outdoors kinds of things together. And one of the things we do is we'll rent a house at the beach or the mountains, a big house, and a dozen or so people will come. It's great, yeah. But to make it safe, what we do is, everybody sort of assumptively has all their shots and boosters, but also everybody double tests before they come. They test twice in the week before they're coming and on the day that they come. And what that does is it allows you to kind of like, well, this is, I've been as prudent as I can be if I'm going to talk to folks at all. From my end, I would be happy to say, I would test before coming to your house. I would say as a general rule, I don't eat indoors at restaurants or, in people's houses where we haven't done some kind of testing or, made some kind of effort to keep everybody safe. And it's a pain, but I think it's a prudent pain.
I had said to Lynn that perhaps we could wait till the weather was stably warm, and I know the way her house is set up, she's got a courtyard. We could be in and out as we choose.
That'd be great, yeah.
Mhm.
Well, maybe we'll wait till spring is here or pollen's come and gone. I don't know. But something just the offer stands.
let's not lose track of the idea. I think it's a great idea, and I don't want it to
Yeah.
slip through the cracks.
Yeah.
All
Yeah.
right.
Yeah, thanks, Lynn.
Yeah,
thank
okay.
you.
Thank you, Lynn.
And
And-
we've got another outing coming up to Oakwood Cemetery in mid-April, I think, that we've got to plan for too. So,
Do we have a date on that?
yeah, who's got handy? March, that didn't help them. I was thinking it was the 11th, but I'm not sure that that's correct. While we're talking, I'll pull out my.
So, have you all heard of the Juniper Level Botanical Garden?
Yeah.
Yeah,
Oh,
So it's just south of Raleigh. Anyway, they've posted several weekends that the admission is free. I don't know if that would interest anybody or not. I've never been there.
I have. It's amazing that what one man decided to do
Yeah,
before he
with
turned
the
it over.
Oakwood Cemetery,
to-
that one is scheduled for April 11th, not to go there, but that's what our challenge will be on April 11th. So we would probably try to schedule something within the week or two before that.
The challenge is cemeteries.
Uh-huh.
Cheerful. Jeez.
That's a challenge.
All right, as long as I'm not in it, I guess it'll be okay.
the
It's
challenge is to
beautiful.
stay out of it. Yeah.
It's a beautiful neighborhood and a lot of statuary, and if you don't want to go in the cemetery, the Oakwood neighborhood is
This in Raleigh?
yeah, this is
Yes.
northeast of downtown. It's walkable from the legislature, probably, isn't it, Larry? Is it?
There's parking there in the
Yeah.
cemetery.
Okay, it isn't that far from Peace University and down in that area.
The cemetery has an interesting grouping of Confederate soldiers, about 1,200. They were exhumed and reburied there over time, and it's a very interesting place just to walk around. So I mean, it's a great spot. I mean, I really like that cemetery. I've been there a number of times. It's great photography opportunities. So
my late husband's family is buried there.
is that
Oh,
right? Oh, okay.
Oh,
I'm debating, well, I may bring some ashes and scatter them. I'll see. I don't know if that would be too strange for you all.
yeah. This is a horrible segue, but there are a number of different and good restaurants near. The only problem is the legislature is in session, and it's if we go over there and expect to eat, we may not be able to get in without some sort of reservations. I've worked a lot downtown in Raleigh, and when the legislature is in session, that part of town is kind of chaotic.
Well, I guess the bottom line is that sometime before, maybe even the week before April 11th, that there'll be a notice going out that people are going to get together. So, Bill, is there a tips and tricks today?
Well, what I had here was just something from the little outing that we had. Let's see. Is it up there?
Yep.
Okay. A couple of weeks ago, we had an outing that was pretty much for nighttime photography and actually pretty much segueing into doing some was it
Light painting.
light painting? There we go.
Yeah.
Find these words now and then. Whoops. Oh, crap. Let me get back. I'm such a doo-doo. And what,
There we are. I mean,
Okay.
you're up.
Yeah, and what I did, because there's a few folks there that never had done this before, may not have been very comfortable with nighttime photography. So I started out with a simple premise that I didn't realize was probably not a good one. And the first one, my first statement was set your ISO at the lowest. You know, we don't want to use auto ISO because, you know, at nighttime, you can tend to get noise in the shadows. And we're going to be playing around with longer shutter speeds, so we don't care. So everybody put their ISO on the lowest, which was generally about 100. And we went to shutter priority. What I did not say is where to start. So I don't know where people started, but we had some problems. And I think what the first problem was, and again, this was because I was not clear enough, that on here under shutter speed, let's say that somebody, you know, it was getting dark out, where it had the lowest ISO, and say we started at 1/60th of a second. Well, at 6:30 at night, it was pretty dark already. And since we didn't have the auto ISO on, what could have happened is that at 1/60th of a second, there was so little light that the aperture, you know, your lens that opens up with the blades to allow light in, it might have gone down to the lowest and couldn't go any lower. So what happens then, your screen started going dark. And I don't know if it was Susan or Helen, we were having trouble because they were on live view, and all of a sudden we couldn't see anything, it was black. And I says, okay, just turn on your auto ISO. So that automatically made everything come back together as far as the exposure triangle. Yeah, so the ISO went up, the aperture was now a little better up at, say, a 60th of a second. What I should have been telling you to do is look at your shutter speed and keep decreasing it until your image came to, because what we wanted was the lower, you know, we wanted a slow shutter speed so we could do the light painting. So that was kind of a failure on my part to say that, but we're going to get back out again and try this again. So hopefully I'll do a little better job of being behind y'all with this. And so, yeah, if we're talking about shutter speeds, we're on a tripod, our image stabilization is off. We should be able to shoot at almost any shutter speed. Most of my images of the barn that night or the silo was like 15 or 20 seconds. So what we'll do is we'll do a little better job of sitting down before we get out there and going over it again.
Okay.
Now, the other thing, no, I'm not done.
Okay.
The other thing
Sorry.
that came up is Helen could not focus on this one piece of the barn. Because what had happened, it got too dark. Autofocus is looking at contrast, and it was just too dark. So what we all ended up doing is getting off of autofocus and going on to manual. Now, even in dark situations, and if an object isn't really big in your viewfinder, or we went to live mode, is you can actually use the plus and minus buttons on the back of your camera to magnify your LCD in the back, which then you can see your subject larger. Then when you take your focus ring, it becomes much more detailed. You know, you can, your eyes will be able to focus and see when the focus hits what you want to hit. And of course, the other thing was to use a flashlight. You know, we could have used that too. But I just brought two pictures here that shows the buttons. On the Nikon, it's often on the left side down here. You can see the plus and the minus button.
You need to change,
Scroll to it, Bill.
change slides. We're seeing the first slide. There.
There you go.
Yeah.
So over here on the Nikon, they're usually on the left-hand side. You'll see the plus and the minus. So if you have this sitting on your tripod, you're looking through the LCD, you're having trouble focusing on your subject because it might be a little too small and so it's a little dark out, you can press that plus button and it'll magnify toward your subject more. And then you'll be able to move your focus ring and see the focus much clearer. And I think that helped. I think Susan and Helen, I think you guys worked with it and found it pretty important to know that function. On a Canon camera, it's often up in the top right-hand corner here, the plus and the minus. I went to look for Sony and I had trouble understanding, but I think there is at least a plus button somewhere on the back of the Sony that will do this. And on certain models, it's the control wheel that you have on the back of the Sonys, which is similar to this. And it was pressing the middle button that would magnify it in. So that's just, something that we probably have to practice a little more for nighttime photography, knowing that these little things exist that can help us. And also, if you're on live view and you magnify in a little bit, and if you have a flashlight, try to get your flashlight on that subject too, so you can really, really get in and focus at a much finer detail.
Lynn, you started to say something about Sony.
Well, maybe it's because I have the A7, but there are plus and minus buttons just to the left of, so if you look at the right-hand image you have of the Canon, on the Sony, they're just to the left of where they are on the Canon.
Yep.
But maybe the some of the other Sonys maybe don't have that.
I have a plus and minus on my 6000.
Okay, then sounds like we're all good because we got the A7s, the 6000 series. So I think we're covered there.
What I didn't know was I've often, after I've taken a picture and I want to see if it's in, sharp, then I'll look at the plus and minus, but I didn't know you could do it before you took the picture. That's awesome to know that. So thank you.
That's why they are tips and tricks.
Well, and I started to say a minute ago, rudely interrupting Bill, but we are about at the end of the tips and tricks list we had, and not today, but maybe at a live meeting sometime soon, we can do what we did the last time and extrapolate the list into the future.
Challenges.
Yeah. Okay. Thanks, Bill.
Moving along.
We ready for pictures?
Yeah.
I had this,
Rather have ice cream.
Always.
We can do that when we all go to Lynn's. We'll have ice cream.
We could just have an ice cream party.
well, I had this set up and then, no, I don't. I can find the right icon. There we go. Okay, I need to resize the screen. I had to move it around in order to get to the buttons. And I want to do hide floating. And I want to do go full screen. Okay. This is Larry's, and it was skipped last time, I guess, because of technical or time or whatever, but it fits this challenge as well. And Larry, you want to talk about what you did between the original RAW and this one?
Well, I had to export it on my Apple laptop so I could get it into JPEG, but I did shoot it in RAW. The light, this was this artificial light challenge that we had. And I used Bill's suggestion, I used a small LED flashlight, which I placed under the sort of near the chin. So I was able to get a little artificial light and blacken the back. I have a black board, so I just put it on the back. And yeah, it's a small image here, but basically I shot it at ISO of 1000 at f13 and a 60th of a second. And that was my attempt to get this artificial light project. So
and Larry, I think that the staging of it and the lighting of it is just really, really perfect.
Mm-hmm.
And
Yeah, it's very pleasing.
In processing it in RAW, do you think you were able to do more with it than you might have if you'd just been processing a JPEG?
Well, I'm probably not at the level that some of you in terms of shooting in RAW and working with it in a post-production way. So I just use the post-production Apple post-production, which I have, which works for me, but I have to continue to look at this opportunity with different eyes if I, when I go into a higher level of post-production.
Yeah, and this may be one that you really didn't need it. I mean, it's a nice shot. All right, thanks, Larry. Next up is Susan, and there are a couple that are coming up, Susan and Lynn, that submitted before shots, before tweaking and after. Susan?
Okay, so this is my before, and what happened was Bill had mentioned getting things with shadows, and since it kept being not sunny out, I finally got a bunch of my socks and stuck them on the bed and shined two big flashlights on either side. And this is what I got, and this is the RAW of the shot I got. And one thing that happened that I didn't realize is that in the editing software, these areas came up with royal blue, and it was really weird, and I didn't know what it was. And it turned out that it was in the shadowy areas, and it was part of the editing software. It's called clipping, I guess. So you can have certain areas of your picture have this royal blue if they're too dark, or red if they're too light. And I was trying to actually get a copy of that to show everybody, and then realized it was just a part of the editing, and I couldn't get it. You know, it was part of the editing software. It wasn't in the picture. Anyway, this is the before, and this is the after. And what amazed me is, first of all, I just put it on auto in the raw editor to see what it did. And I actually just looked at the settings and was kind of fascinated because, you know, when you look at the other picture, you don't see all the details here. And somehow just doing auto in the editor, it turned out that this is what it looked like, even though the picture itself had been taken with all these shadows in the dark. So it kind of amazed me, and I just let it do its own thing rather than me trying to get this. At first I was trying to get stuff and then realized that the auto kind of amazed me at what it captured, what it was able to capture in the picture. So it was, yeah, so that's, yeah. And it was shot at f8, 140 shutter speed, ISO 2000.
And Susan, this is not a throwaway photo. I mean, there's a, you know, going back to the picture in a picture thing, cropped up. It almost becomes an abstract. Nice shot.
I like the picture. It's intriguing.
Those are my socks.
Yeah.
I think it's a great idea. I really appreciate the creativity of coming up with that idea for an image.
I do
Yeah,
too.
mine would all be black or gray. So thanks, Susan.
Where do you get your socks? I need some.
And then Lynn's up next, and she didn't have to just take pictures of socks, but the first one is her before picture.
Wow.
So obviously these were in Egypt. I've been shooting, I'm not bragging, but I've been shooting in RAW for a long time. So I use Lightroom, and sadly, I cannot tell you what the f-stop and all that stuff was. I didn't record it, so I apologize. But this is the before processing picture.
Where is it? I mean, what is this? Is it,
This is in Egypt.
yeah, and is this, I guess it's a pyramid?
Yes, it is.
Which
I'm
one?
just trying to, yeah.
But what I loved all the clouds and the light on the pyramid, and that was why I probably could crop out some of that bottom part, but
I think what happens to this one is major. It just adds some saturation.
Yeah.
yeah.
This
The
one.
trouble I had there was keeping my lens clean. It was awful. Because the wind would blow and there, and so I did a lot of spot removing from stuff on my lens.
And maybe
Beautiful.
this may be a tips and tricks for the future, but there is a way of getting at all these settings if you don't have any other way to do it. But there's a thing called an Exis viewer. You can download it, it's free, and then you drop your photo on there and it gives you more data than you ever wanted to know. But the EXIF data is with the file, and just because you can't see it doesn't mean that it's not there.
Right.
And I used it for if we have time to get to the shot that I took, I used it to solve kind of a mystery to me. But anyway, great shots, Lynn. I mean,
Yeah.
be you the trip. And this is a good example of foreground, middle ground, and background.
I think, I'm just noticing you can see some sun blotches on the surface of the pyramid in the edited version. I'm not sure you could see them in the before. Maybe. Oh, yeah. But anyway, I just noticed them.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's kind of cool.
Beautiful photograph.
Incredible.
And Tom is next. And he did his before and after in one shot.
Yeah, let's see. Can you hear me?
Yes,
Yes.
Okay. Yeah, I took, so I shot this, I set my camera to shoot both JPEG and RAW. And I just took this, so you understand this is just one click of the shutter. And one of them is RAW and the other one is JPEG. And anybody want to guess which is which?
JPEG on the left.
JPEG on the bottom.
No, it's on the left.
Left.
Ding, ding,
Yeah,
ding, ding, ding.
JPEG on the left, yeah.
Okay, the RAW is on the left and the JPEG is on the right. And
Opposite of what I thought.
yeah, that's what I thought too. You know, I was like, what? So anyway, that's, I'm not sure what that means. It was a crappy day. It was rainy and those daffodils were falling over. And anyway, for some reason, that's the way it turned out. And I took 5 or 6 different views and they're all the same way. The RAW was much brighter and livelier. But at the same time, you could argue that the JPEG captured the mood better, because it was really kind of dismal.
So
Mhm.
Because actually it should. Yeah, to some point, the JPEG should be closer to what you've seen.
Yeah.
Because it's gone through and been transformed to a JPEG using the standard that JPEG stands for.
Right.
Now, usually with the RAW, they tend to be a little more flat, because the whole idea is that you have all the information, nothing's been touched. Every little piece of if you have a 24 megapixel sensor, all 24 million spots have the data in it. And it's usually like a little on the flat side. So it takes editing to bring it out. So it is kind of strange that they're the opposites. Yeah.
Well,
I have a question.
For JPEGs. Go ahead, Lynn.
Was the raw picture processed at all? Or is that
No,
just?
neither one is
Oh.
processed at all.
Oh, okay.
Well, and here, I think I'm saying the same thing as Bill just said, but there are settings on your camera that are going to impact the JPEG that the camera saves. One example is setting the camera to vivid versus standard versus whatever else. But there is the camera is doing processing on the JPEGs. You are doing the processing on the RAW. I don't know if that makes sense.
It's called picture control.
Yeah.
And you can go into your camera and, if you're maybe out in the fall where there's a lot of color and you just want it to have a little extra punch, you can set your photo shooting menu to picture control and do vivid. Now that only affects the JPEG. The RAW will always be RAW.
Yeah.
Any adjustments you make on the back of your camera, RAW is RAW, but you can certainly affect a JPEG.
And the same thing is true for I know the newer iPhones. I don't know about how far back it goes, but there are those very same settings that you can use on an iPhone or an Android. It's not just in a camera or a holdable camera non-phone, but it's a good lesson, Tom.
Let me continue this a little bit though, if you don't mind. Here, I still don't understand why there's any advantage in shooting in RAW. So I know that I could take that photograph on the left and make it look like the one on the right. And I know I could make the one on the right look like the one on the left in either well, see, now I get terminology. In my editing suite, it's called the RAW editor is called Develop, and the other one is called Photo, the one that you after you develop, it goes into photo. So I know I could take develop and make it look like the one that's in photos, and I know I could go into photos and make it look like the one that's in edit. So why shoot in raw and take up all that extra space?
Tom,
With your creativity, Tom, with all your creativity, because I love what you do with your images. But I'm betting that the raw you could make and do more adjustments to than a JPEG. I mean, if you're only trying to, if you're only trying to equal it, yeah, that's one thing. But when you go into little things that I don't understand, like color blending and changing colors or curves and stuff like that, I think that's when you're going to start seeing that there's more flexibility.
Well, but okay.
Tom,
I think that you're wrong, Bill. I think I can do a whole lot more in what we call, what Affinity calls the photos persona than if you're using the develop persona. But see, that might just be a limitation of this particular software. And if you're in Photoshop or something, you might make absolute perfect sense. But I can't get it. I don't understand it. Even though I do always shoot in RAW. I do shoot in RAW just because why not? You know, it's I've got plenty of space here now.
But Tom, let me step in and say, if we have time to get to what I pulled, I think I can address your point a little bit better if we can get to that photo.
Great.
And my point is going to be that I don't think I need RAW in every single instance, but when I want it or need it, it's there. And so, but I picked a picture that I really wanted to save that without RAW, I don't think I could have saved it. But you'll be the judge of that. So, but this is a lot of good lessons in this.
I have a question, because like I'm wondering, the picture that I shot in the before, the JPEG from that, I don't know that would I have even been able to get to what I got to after, you know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
In other words, I don't know if the JPEG have ever had.
Maybe. The answer is maybe.
Okay.
So, all right, Helen, two of yours. These are, oh, there's Tom's. I thought I'd forgotten this one. It didn't show up on my list. But this is one from the.
This is from the last thing, and this is just this little guy in our crazy fence outside our house, and the artificial light is a bug light.
I was trying to get in his backyard.
The baby.
So, but the point that maybe the interesting point is that I really did a lot of work on that possum, because I did a lot of selective sharpening with it, and and also I put a light on the possum. I shined, when I say a light, I mean in post, not a real light, but I went into the lighting section and trained a little tiny light on his face to bring it out just a little bit.
I love the stuff you do, Tom.
That is a Tom picture, and I love it.
Oh, great. I love that little guy. And my dog sits down there and barks at him for a half an hour.
And Tom, I think that what happened to me just now happened to Bill last time. The list of photos that I printed off didn't include this one. And I thought I had included it, but it was not in my list. But as a tip, for some reason, I have no clue as to why this happened the way it did, but I'm glad it's here. And now we're going to.
One other thing, there was, I put one of those pikes was missing, and I moved the one and pull it over. And anyway, I used the clone tool to add another one in there.
Wow.
Great.
Helen's going to give us a lesson in semi-abstracts.
I decided to kill two birds with one stone and do my quote graffiti and shoot in raw. And so that I shot it handheld, I think at a 200th of a second, probably f11 and autofocus. And in raw, I played with it a little bit in processing afterwards, and didn't notice any advantage really. I was trying to darken the lower right part of the snake. It looks like it's maybe a little overexposed there. To me, I can't tell. I'm in a bright room, but it just, nothing I did made any difference, I thought. So I just changed it to JPEG and let it go.
It's a good
I
picture.
tried I think I did to the saturation and some of the things and tweaked it a little bit, but it was already so vivid with the complementary colors, and I like the lines in the brickwork.
Where
Yeah.
is it, Helen?
This is in an area near Sam's in Durham called U Hill or University Hill.
Oh, yeah. Mhm.
O2 Fitness. There's an
Mhm.
apartment complex, which I managed to get myself locked into the parking lot and had to get the grounds crew to let me out for spending the night. It was fun walking around because it's not graffiti. It's way below. Both of these they're wall art's what I'm calling them.
Mm-hmm.
So there's a long, long wall of the snake undulating.
It's really beautiful over there. That's the one with the little girl with a roller skate, putting the roller skate on. Anyway,
Yeah.
that's great. Really great.
One of the nice things about this one, Susan, Helen, is the depth of field, because you got it sharp, close up and far off. And I think that's what makes the picture.
Yeah, I actually got a sharp picture.
Yeah.
Really nice.
And this one is, this next one of yours is equally interesting and sharp.
Oh, nice.
Oh,
That is cool.
where is that? What is it?
It's a wall. They've allowed different artists to come through and paint all of the walls. So that's a wall above a store, or maybe next to it. So that's a huge, I'd say that's 20 or 30 feet of painting.
Looks like old neckties I used to have back in the 70s.
It does remind me of ties. Yeah.
But in the end one, I did no editing in RAW on that one because I didn't know how to remove. There was a street light actually that came up about a couple of inches here that would show you the size if I'd left it of this. But there, in fact, were two street lights, and I just put it into elements and removed the street lights. Because I felt like they took away from the creativity of the artist.
Helen, I think I really like both of these shots, and on this one, the only comment I would make is I think I would have cropped out a little bit more on the right-hand side.
Okay.
Where that yellow jags, and then just
that's part of the building, and I didn't know what to do with it. But that is where the building has a place where it sticks out further.
Yeah, well, you can still crop it, I think.
I think it would be good to do it. Or I could go through there and get the lens distortion and try to parallax and all that mess and get it straightened. But I discovered that Canon's what is it? CR2,
CR2, yeah.
Yeah. I came up blank on how to convert it, and I sent out help messages to everybody I knew saying, what do I do? And Mike told me one way, and I found a batch way to convert every picture that I took in that particular file. But it was more, I had to create another file, a destination folder, and it was too much trouble. Mike's way was better, but by that time I was sweating blood and sent them on in without doing much processing.
Well,
But it was fun to go take those pictures over there. They're incredible.
next up is Chuck. Lose you, Chuck?
Oh, yes, we were just down, well, thank you. We were just down at near Swansboro. It's on the White Oak River, and this is where the White Oak River empties into Bogue Sound. I've never been there. Maybe I was there years and years ago, but anyway, so Jennifer and I went camping for like 4 days down there in a nice park, state park. It was very, very pleasant. And I think from now on, you would have had to make reservations 6 months in advance, because I think the place is booked up now. But as the warm season approaches, but as you can see, it was overcast with some interest in the clouds, but the light was very flat. And when I shot this in RAW, and I guess I kind of regret, I should have maybe done a comparison between the JPEG and or just a RAW, and then how I fixed it. This is a JPEG as a result, but I shot it in RAW, which is why I always shoot in RAW. And then once I make my edits, then I save it in my Mac Photos program as a JPEG. But I also save the original RAW on a different location. But anyway, so I was happy with how I was able to get the clouds, to get some detail in the clouds, and I liked how the overhanging tree is sharply in focus on the bottom there in the reflection of it. Give me a second, I'll tell you the EXIF. I was using my wide angle lens, which I like to use, super wide angle lens, I like to use for landscape stuff. It's and it's a 11 to 16 millimeter zoom. So this was at ISO of 100, and I used the 16 millimeters focal length, and it's f5 at a 320th of a second. And I did have a polarizing filter on too. So anyway, that's what I did, and I would not have been able to get this result, I think, if I had shot it in a JPEG. Because I think I did quite a bit of manipulation of reducing highlights, because the sky was very flat white, kind of milky white looking in my original file, my RAW file. And the grass was very gray looking, so I enhanced saturation. Same with the tree, was kind of gray looking. So that's what I did.
It's a good shot.
Thank you.
Moody.
Yeah,
I like to try to get moody shots. Yes.
But the way the water has begun to soften, you're good with that, with the softening of the water, and you do it in your waterfalls.
Yeah, I'm really attracted to photographing water, and what makes the water look soft there is the sky, the reflection of the sky, which is, of course, a different technique than what I would use when I'm shooting moving water. I use a much longer exposure to get it to blur. And if it's light, very light outside, then you have to do things like use a neutral density filter, so you can stop it down, let less light in, so you can leave the exposure longer and make things blur out. But I didn't have to do any of that. In this case, it just happened naturally with the sky.
Sky and the water.
Hey, Chuck?
Both of them.
Chuck?
Yes, so, yeah.
Did you have a tripod here?
No, that was handheld because I wasn't working with a tripod at all. It was a 320th of a second. So, and then
Yeah,
this this is on the way back home. We decided my wife is always good about suggesting places to stop, and I turned off my grumpy mode, just like head straight ahead and cruise control. No, we're not stopping. And I said, okay, let's stop. And we went to Wilson, and this is that whirligig park, which is pretty amazing. And I didn't realize I'd seen it, in WRAL for one station, local station. They have a camera somewhere around there, and they'll show images of that spot. And I didn't really know anything about it. His name is Volis, and I can't remember his
Simpson.
last. Yeah, Volis Simpson. And I don't know a lot about him, but just that he was an interesting artist, and liked to do whirligig structures. I mean, I can't even imagine that how difficult those things are. Huge, and they're big and heavy pieces. And anyway, it was a big community effort, obviously, to get this, because Wilson, man, it's one of those towns where, it's driving into town there. It's got left behind. There's not a lot going on there. Maybe it was tobacco, maybe it was textile. It was hard to tell. But
Tobacco.
What was it? Tobacco?
Yeah.
Yeah, and it's it hasn't really come back yet. Maybe there's some things going on. It doesn't look terrible, but it looks like a tough area, So, but this park was a big community effort, and there's just all kinds of plaques indicating, who helped get it to go. And yeah, I think there's probably some really good stories to tell, but it's just a fascinating park. It's hard to shoot because everything's so big. And so I like the effect that the wide angle, I didn't do any, what you were one of the guys,
Perspective change.
Perspective changes. I may try that some, but I kind of like that.
Yeah.
I was going to say, Chuck, this would be a good one to try it, and it would be easy because you've got the same angle on both sides. So many times it's angled more on one side than the other. But if you were to straighten those poles, you might lose it. So this is a good example of get back and probably include more in the photograph than you think you're actually going to use, so that if you have to do some distortion control, you've got the room to do it without cutting something or cropping out something that's important. Looks like an interesting place. Great sky.
It's this one, and I did this was 18 millimeters, which it must be because of the crop sensor, because it's 16 but anyway, it's again 100 ISO f10 at 125th of a second, and there it is. Yeah.
Okay. All right. Thank you. Bill, you're up.
Talk about moody.
Yeah.
Oh, near the tree.
Waiting for Godot.
Oh,
Yeah, this was during my December trip out to the Salton Sea out in California. This was one of those exercises in patience. The group of us 7 sat around for probably about 30, 40 minutes waiting just for the sun to set and to get dark enough that the geothermal power plant behind us that had a lot of these yellowish orangish lights around it cast the light onto the tree. So, and this was this I processed in RAW. I don't know if I got value out of it. We did this as a kind of a experiment to see what people see out of RAW, if they see any difference, if there's any value. I've come to the conclusion, I think, that, well, with my camera, the JPEG files are often about 40 meg and the RAW files are about 60. And I think since my philosophy is to try to get the best image straight out of the camera, and I don't do much post-processing. We had that little workshop, and I only use like 8 of the simplest tools in Photoshop Elements. And I've been trying to dabble a little bit in Affinity. But yeah, I'm on the fence. Yeah, I was trying to find an image maybe that I could fix, that I couldn't fix in JPEG, but I couldn't find it. So I don't know if it's because I have the luxury of the size images that my D850 creates, or the fact that I'm not smart enough to go into the software to be able to even make this image better. So I think I'm just kind of stuck in the middle somewhere.
Yeah. And I'll say something I've said before, not today, but before today, and that is that one reason to use RAW is because there's an intermediate step of a TIFF, and the TIFF gives you more than JPEG. And a lot of times, all I'll do is just convert a RAW file without doing any tweaking on the raw page at all, just so I have a bit more data in the TIFF. So, you know, even if you don't process in RAW, even if you just go directly to elements with a TIFF, I think you still have a little bit more to play with. Anyway, my two.
So, Michael, so if you were to like send something off to get printed, is it better? It sounds like it's better to send a TIFF than a JPEG because it might execute better.
And Chuck, yeah, that's a good point. It's what you have to manipulate in a TIFF that helps, but all of that, once you freeze it into a JPEG, it doesn't matter. You'll send you'll send a JPEG to the printer.
Well, I just want, like, do some printers print from TIFF or pretty much a universally JPEG?
I think it's pretty universally from JPEG. I don't know that there's any advantage to printing from a TIFF, but I think there is an advantage to processing in a TIFF before you convert it to a JPEG. But you know, what do I know? That may be a silly notion.
So, Mike, when you move from the raw processor, you can change, and it goes into the regular page, as you call it. Then you can do that as a TIFF, because mine.
Yes.
I don't know what mine is when I do that.
Yeah.
Anyway, thanks, Mike. That's I'll look into that. Thank you.
Yeah, there's a drop-down menu on what I use that lets you save it as a JPEG or as a TIFF.
Yeah, mine, when I click on develop, which is the end of the raw process, it just goes bang right into the other thing, and I don't know whether it's well, then subsequently I can make it either a TIFF or a JPEG. But anyway, I'm taking too much time here.
Yeah, you're going to lose too much if you go directly. I think when you go directly to it, and I use the Nikon converter, and it gives me a choice. I was working with Helen's photo in Adobe Camera Raw. It'll let you go to a TIFF, I think, but
okay.
I don't want to bog us down anymore. I'm sorry, I slowed us down a little bit. Has Frank come in? I don't see who all's here. I guess not.
Awesome photograph, Bill.
Yeah, terrific photograph. I still like the black and white, Bill.
Oh, that was a different tree. Yeah, I printed this one, and I tell you, it looks spectacular. It's up on the wall. It takes me forever to put something on a wall.
Yeah, but Bill, I think
when I came off the printer.
In saying that, Bill, I think this would be a great one for a print on metal. This would really jump out at you on metal. Frank has a couple that we didn't get to last time, but he's still on his way here, I think. So I'm going to skip over his two and get to that. That one's his as well. All right. This is mine.
Cheers.
And what you see here is not my best work. This is a canopy over an open area on a cruise ship. And I was in a conversation with the guy that was watching the admittance desk, or I don't know what happened, but I wound up with nothing but garbage. This is the best TIFF, I mean the best JPEG I had out of I don't know how many shots. And I don't know why I didn't go back to shoot it again, but for some reason I didn't get home with anything but this. And it made me hurt. Actually, I took 3 shots in a bunch of bracketed groups, and the fault I now know was that I had rotated the exposure compensation wheel, and I underexposed every single shot by 2 stops.
Wow.
And this is the one in the middle. There was one better, more exposed that really wasn't any better, and then one that was underexposed even more. And this is my point, that I don't think I could have, and maybe Tom, with your skills, or people that know a whole lot more than I do, but I use a simplified method like Bill does. I don't know that I could have gotten anything out of this picture if I had not used RAW. In RAW, you can correct exposure compensation. You can dial the exposure back to 0. So a -2 becomes a 0. And I processed 3 photographs so that I got them back to 0 exposure compensation, to 0.7 over and 0.7 under. And that's the picture.
Oh,
Oh, wow.
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 This is not a file that was better exposed than the one I just showed you. The one I showed you is this file.
Hmm. Yeah, that's
So
amazing.
I think there are tools in RAW converters that are not there, or not easily manipulated in Elements, at least. And again, I don't do anything more than convert a RAW to a TIFF before I start working on it normally. And I do that simply because I think there's more to work with in RAW, but there is still more to work with in TIFF than there is JPEG.
Oh, wow.
Anyway.
Now, got a question for Stephen. You use Photoshop, correct?
I do.
Do you use RAW?
Yeah, constantly.
And what's your take on it? Because I think if anything, you are probably one of the more experienced in Photoshop, and we'd like maybe have a little insights on your part.
Well, I don't know, because I use mostly Lightroom. I'm in desperate straits when I go to Photoshop. There are a few things you could do that you can't, but I'm also shooting birds and a lot of nature stuff, and you often get terrible exposures. You know, you're trying to shoot a bird and it flies into the shade, okay, or it's already in the shade and you've got but you need to be able to make big changes between light and dark in the picture frequently. It's like this thing that you're showing us, that was a striking, elegant example of it. But I have so many exposures that are badly exposed in the first place that if I wasn't able to rescue a fair number of them, I'd be in serious trouble. So, I shoot in RAW all the time just because I'm bad at shooting. I'm hoping that I'm praying for the Z8 and, being able to. I've started using my wife's mirrorless camera, and the wonderful thing about it, of course, is all of you know who've got them, is you're actually seeing what's going to come out of the camera, so that by the time I read 3 dials and the bird has jumped 3 branches, a lot of my shots are not what I want them to be. And with hers, even though it's kind of the low end of the mirrorless thing, I'm getting a higher hit rate because when I click the shutter, I kind of know what's going to come out on the other end of things. But when you're not, and I think even still, if you're shooting stuff where you don't have a lot of choice in what you're doing. If you're going to shoot the bird at all, you got to shoot, and you hope you can get something out of it because it's going to fly off if you don't. You end up having to try to rescue a lot of stuff that if you don't have RAW, there's not nearly as much chance that you can.
So there
It's
is
just
big value. There is big value to RAW.
You can simply have
just-
more information there,
Yeah, we just have to
And-
find it, or I guess in some points, tell me if I'm wrong or right, is that you have to be committed to understanding Photoshop and some of these ways on changing maybe colors or your highlights and shadows and your luminance and your hues and things. Does that get you where you want to go? Yeah, because in my case, like I said, I do very little. I straighten, I crop, I
Yeah.
dehaze, I do almost nothing. I do maybe a little.
Right, yeah.
So I think I have to go deeper to truly understand the value of RAW. That's what I got out of this exercise.
There's a lot that can be done that, and I sort of cheat as much as I can on these things. I've got a set of if you look, say, Adobe has a set of, I don't know, you got 8 or 10 choices in Adobe that will do a whole bunch of things. I'll take, this landscape, or I'll take the portrait, and it changes who knows how many things. In birddom, there's a fellow in Australia who will happily sell you his sort of prepackaged thing.
Presets.
Presets. And there may be 30 or 40, but if you got, say, your bird that's sort of predominantly yellow, you break out your yellow presets, you just scroll through that to say, what do I like? And you start there. And you may end up tweaking it, but it often saves a lot of work trying to get to that point. But it works because he's done the work of going through RAW and doing a lot of stuff that is happening kind of behind the scenes. As far as you're concerned, you're just going click, and it does all of the work that he did for you ahead of time.
One of the things that, as you talk, Stephen, it kind of and it's maybe not a good thing to say, but it may be that RAW is the savior of bad photographs.
That's exactly right. Yeah, I think that's exactly so.
Maybe Bill or other people at that skill level don't need it as much as I need it. So,
Well, I think that's a modest thing to say, but I think it's great not to have any more skill than you have to have. It's nice if they come out nicely. But I guess what I am saying is, you're going to shoot, a lot of kinds of nature shots. You're going to get a much higher level of bad pictures than you will if you're shooting things that's there and you get to sort of contemplate for a while, how do I want to shoot this landscape? Because the waterfall ain't going anywhere. The bird is going to be someplace else half a second from now. So, it depends in part on what you're shooting too, but I have no problem saying I shoot a lot of really crappy photos, and I'm glad to be able to rescue them any way I can.
Well, and Ansel Adams said once, wrote once, if you get, and I don't remember the exact number, but it's within this frame. He said, if you get 6 or 7 good photos over the course of a year, you've done a good job.
You've done a lot, yeah.
And he was carrying wet
to
the desert.
I write a little haiku about my pictures, and the guy who was kind of the grandfather of haiku said, if you do 2 good haiku in a lifetime, you're doing very, very well. So anyway, the standards aren't quite as rigorous perhaps for us.
I think for me, the 2 pictures that I showed, and I took about 20 of some others, they were static, they were flat, they were sharp. Everything that I took was already done. There was really no need for me to do anything, and there was really no need for me to have been shooting in RAW. But I can certainly see, well, I've never shot a good bird photograph in my life, and I may try now just to see if I can get a little bit better. So it's a choice, I think, based on what you're photographing.
One thing that the reason when I showed the auto, my after picture, I looked at the settings because I had sort of played around, and the settings I got once it did auto, I never would have thought about doing. And so it was interesting to look back on that and see what auto came up with, because some of the stuff I would have thought would have been changed wasn't changed. So I know I need to study it more, but it was really strange. In other words, instead of me just trying things, I thought, well, just go ahead and do the auto and look at it and try to learn from whatever that is. That probably will take me another year.
Yeah, I think that's right. I've done that too, and I learned a lot from it. Auto's pretty damn smart. So I'm just, well, why did they do that? But it worked, and you think, okay, why did that work?
Actually, at first I was a little concerned about this theme, or the challenge of RAW, but I don't know. I think we learned quite a bit out of it. We weren't going for the perfect images. We were going for maybe the next step of our journey during photography. So yeah, it turned out really well.
What's the challenge?
I was also forced to watch a couple of YouTube videos because I couldn't figure out, like Helen said, once I had this image, I couldn't figure out what to do with it, and I had to do some YouTube videos to find out what to do, so.
Good work.
Yeah, it made us do stuff, so.
What is the challenge for next time?
Graffiti.
And where is there graffiti around here? Can somebody?
Oh, you can go to Bynum Bridge.
Oh, right.
Yeah,
Okay.
there is some there, yeah.
Yeah.
And there's a little building in the weeds. I don't know if there's some kind of diverting of water or something back there that it's in pretty bad shape, but it has a lot of graffiti on it.
Yeah.
And
There by
what
the
is
parking lot too at the bridge.
and the
If you
will,
will,
like, what's your definition of graffiti? Because there's a guy called Banksy that does graffiti, but he does wonderful stuff. So maybe it could be wall art, like out in Siler City, or some of the things that Helen you found while you were out and about. It's all around us.
Yeah, Duke has an overpass between the East and West campus that I meant to go to yesterday and I didn't get there. And then State has a tunnel that's full of it. So if you want to go to Raleigh or to Durham, I can't think of any rail places where there'd be box cars parked, that kind of thing. Yeah, there is one in East Durham, but it's off of 40, but I think that's where they just put the connector to 70. I don't know what you'd find as far as train cars, but I couldn't think of much either. And that's why I went to the University Hill site, because I knew it wasn't quite graffiti, but I was going to use it come hell or high water, because that was all I could think of in my doctor's office. I shot one of the pictures that I took from my doctor's office window, so I was over there.
To draw out the definition of graffiti, I've seen some cars around that are pretty well decorated with stickers. And I think that probably comes close to graffiti. And I don't know that graffiti has to be non-art. There's a guy that I follow on Flickr that does a lot of graffiti artwork under viaducts out in California. And the art is incredible. And I think that Helen's examples today that there are art and graffiti, perhaps, in a broad sense. Frank had 3 pictures, well, 2 from the other day and 2 from today, and he thought he was going to be here before we closed up, but I'm going to hold off and show those pictures the next time that he can actually be at a meeting, so that he gets the benefit of live feedback. And
You're prepared.
yes, we are prepared.
I've got 2 weeks to get it into my car.
Okay. Do we
I'll
need to
send you a
remind you?
reminder notice.
If we do a nighttime thing, we'll make sure you get it into your car, okay?
All right.
Well,
I'll get it soon.
this has been a good meeting. I join Bill in saying that even having to articulate what I do, I think I learned something, because I think what I'm learning is that there's more to learn. And so it's been a good session. Anything
Bye.
to close?
Yes.
Great.
Lynn?
No, I was just saying goodbye.
Oh, okay.
Oh,
All
what was your
right.
question?
See you all in 2 weeks.
All
Take
right.
care, folks. Bye-bye.
Great.
Bye.
See you.